Curtis A reached out to me, said make a theme song for my show. Said alright, just give me all the details, man. And my homie says he don't know. Well, if you're gonna pay me big bucks, cause I might should have something to say. He said, you know what I bring, I'm the customizing king, nothing else matters anyway. So is he gonna have guests? I don't know. Is he gonna go live? I don't know. What time will it be? What will you see? I'm pretty much in the dark, but I can guarantee you'll be customizing action figures, getting paint all on his fingers. It's art by Akerman. It's art by Akerman. Tips and tricks and conversation, sharing his gift with every nation. It's art by Akerman. Art by Akerman. You best get ready, cause now it's time for Art by Akerman.
All right, folks, welcome back to another How'd They Do That? This is the series where I talk to different artists in the community about either a certain custom they did or a certain style of paint job or some sort of artwork that they do. And they give us some insights on how they do it, what tips and tricks that they have, and hopefully encourage some others to get started and do some stuff they're on their own. So the guest that I have today does some really amazing stuff that I'm interested to hear kind of how he comes about it, because he does some really great like gradients and transitions between colors. Love his work. And on top of that, just a cool dude and part of a group that has the best Patreon in the business. I mean, if you want to give your money to some folks on a regular basis and feel like you're getting value for your money, right here, Your Allegiance podcast. Okay. They've got a group that you can go on the Discord and talk about. They got it like broken down into categories you can talk about. They've got shows that they do just for their Patreon subscribers. They do giveaways. Plus they're just really cool. They started off as kind of an audio. I'm not one of those audio guys. But then they realized that some people actually like looking at their faces. And so they decided to do a YouTube version of their show as well, which is what I watch because, I want to see those guys. They're pretty good looking. And the one that I've got today is my good friend, John Caulfield. John, how you doing today?
Hey, Curtis. Thank you. Thank you for such a nice intro. I feel
absolutely
I feel humbled.
It is dragon season. We've got all that going on and a lot of stuff, but I wanted to get you on and talk to you about some of your paint work because last year, well, I guess a little earlier in the year last year, I was still of the mindset of, airbrushes for the devil, which I'm still not sure that that's not correct. But since then I've gotten an airbrush, I've tried it out, and I do believe that it has some interesting uses. And I've enjoyed it. I don't use it on everything, but I've enjoyed using it. But
yeah, it's a tool. It's not
for sure
be all and end all, but it's a good tool to have.
Yeah. But I wanted to talk to you about some of the paint jobs that you've been doing because especially aliens, it seems like, but it's not just like, you don't have to look at a sculpt and go, it's an alien sculpt, but you do these like really vibrant, wild paint jobs. And I wanted to talk to you about it. So here's the thumbnail. Let me throw us down here at the bottom. And here's the thumbnail and the one that I picked out here. Man, like just so much going on here. Like there's a lot of just, different colors and transitioning from one to another. So let's start with this one. Like how do you go about doing something like this? Like, what are the steps that you do?
I mean, the first, of course, like anything, the sculpt always helps a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, it doesn't have to be an alien. But if something does have a lot of texture on it, you can do this kind of not so, it's not so difficult to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step is priming, basically, and the zenithal priming. I think you've talked about that before on the channel. So what I do is I'll generally prime in black because I have a black primer that I like to use that really holds well. So even if I want to go with gray, I'll do black and then sometimes do just a light white over it to get a gray. But for this guy, I did the black primer and then did the zenithal with just a pure white. maybe a
Now, when
little
you're
bit.
priming, are you doing this with like a rattle can, or you're doing this
No,
with an
I
airbrush?
do it with an airbrush,
Okay.
because I think like a lot of people I've had, I've been through the rattle cans where there is a couple that are quite reliable, but I
Hmm.
still didn't always have success with the rattle can. And then
Hmm.
I started with the airbrush and the airbrush primer. And once I actually got for the airbrush, which is a good tip, you can get a kind of a bigger nozzle and needle. So
Oh, okay.
I think it's a 6 millimeter one,
Okay.
needle and nozzle set that goes into and depending on your airbrush brand, it can be maybe 50 or 60 something, 5 or 6 millimeters.
I'm making a
Oh
note of
no,
that right now. Okay.
millimeters or less, but whatever way they measure them,
Okay.
there's 25. I think it must be less than millimeters because anyway, the bigger nozzle, because then you don't have to you don't have to thin the primer, and that's what I don't do
Hmm.
then. So initially I would put a bit of thinner in, and then sometimes I got it a bit too thin, and then just have to do it twice, which
Right.
isn't the end of the day, but end of the world. But you know, you'd have to clean the airbrush in between while you're waiting for the first coat to dry, which is what I hate. So I do a slightly thicker
All right, I'm
nozzle,
sorry,
and then
real quick. What do you have a specific brand that you're using?
yeah, so I use then Vallejo surface primer black.
Okay, I think that's what I'm using too.
Yeah.
I typically, if I'm only doing like one head, rather
Hmm.
than getting the airbrush out and doing all that, I'll just use the Citadel rattle cam.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, definitely if you're doing a lot of things, priming up a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff at once, like man, airbrush is so good. So
And I've even used this one sometimes just with brush. If you're just doing weapons or something like that, that isn't, you're
okay.
not too, maybe not a human face. You'd probably rather it be a bit thinner. But if it's a sword or something like that, and the
Hmm.
swords are sometimes awkward, where uh, there's nowhere really to put them that doesn't. You have to kind of prime the whole lot. Whereas the head, you can have the little stick in the middle of it, and then you don't need to worry
Right.
about priming the inside. With the
Hmm.
sword, where do you hold it while you're priming it? So what
Right.
I'll do is I'll just do one half with the airbrush, and then I'll just do like the handle maybe with a little bit of brush on, and usually not a problem. Um, so yeah, I found that to be very successful. The only thing, I mean, the big downside from rattle can is you should let it dry for longer. I usually just do it in the afternoon, and I won't touch them until the next day.
Gotcha.
Just safe by. I think a couple hours would be fine, but I just rather than to save hassle, because there's nothing worse than starting to paint on something and then you just rub it with your finger and the primer isn't fully dry, and then you're
Right.
back to square one, aren't you? Um, and so yeah, when it comes to the zenithal, then I'll use any white paint, just from your set. I use a lot of Pro Acryl, for example, so I'll use their white, or if you have a white that you like, you can do it in two ways. I often do it in two ways. I'll do the zenithal with the airbrush to get the kind of bigger surfaces that I want to be
Hmm.
a little bit lighter, and then I'll go back in with a thick dry brush
Mm.
um,
Okay.
to highlight even more the areas. So, for example, the eyebrows here on this guy, I would
Hmm.
have done a little bit more with the dry brush, and you can build up the layers that way. Um, just
So
so
then
that
as you're
you,
doing your next
yeah,
colors, like it's giving you a lighter base for it.
yeah, exactly. And then that kind of shows you where maybe the gradients might be.
Hmm.
And because I use it fluorescent paints for these, a lot of these alien type skulls, they're kind of fairly transparent.
Hmm.
They're not like contrast paints where they're purely transparent,
Right.
but you'd need a lot of coats of them to cover, depending on the color, especially the yellows and the oranges and the greens. So what I'll do with this guy then is I'll usually take it. You can do it in two ways. You can do your darkest color first,
Hmm.
depending on how you want it to lay out. And I think on this guy, I did do the darkest color first. So I did like a purple, a fluorescent purple. So I have I have this Pro Acryl set here. You might see
Okay.
down there. They have a set of
Question
6.
about that for
Yeah.
through an airbrush, because I've only just recently started using some of the
Mm-hmm.
Pro Acryl stuff, and it's quite a bit thinner
Yeah.
than like Citadel, or especially thinner than my SoFlat that I use. So when you're using an airbrush, like, do you have to thin it at all, or just very little, or what?
It Very little. Depends on the color. You'll get to know them.
Okay.
Is the way I've kind of got to know them. So, with the fluorescence, yeah, I usually put about two, 3 drops of thinner to maybe 5, 6 drops paint. It's
Gotcha.
kind of,
Okay.
what's that? About a 25% ratio.
Okay.
Um, but you'll kind of get to know the paints. But I have got lots of the Pro Acryl just straight through the airbrush.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you use the really thin nozzle, you
Mm-hmm.
might need to be careful. But the kind of middle one, that's kind of not the detail one, but the one that's kind of everyday use,
Right.
that's pretty safe to use usually. But there is a bit of trial and error at the start, so don't dump like as much paint as you think you'll need in. Dump a
Right.
couple of drops in, maybe stir it with a brush. Or you can do that thing where you hold the front of the airbrush and give it a little press, and it'll blow the
Mm-hmm.
air back in. Um, and yeah, I usually always test it on like a piece of card, or I have the foam. I usually do the foam. The foam that the sticks are in for the heads.
Yeah.
That's covered in paint. I
Gotcha.
usually just squirt a bit of that out.
I
Um,
usually have like a paper towel that I just
yeah,
will put in
perfect.
the booth and
Absolutely
just kind of
perfect.
spray on the paper towel
Yeah,
real quick and just make sure that it's coming out the right
yeah,
way, it's the right color consistency, all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah. And don't worry about wasting a bit of paint. That's kind of in the end, you won't really waste the paint, but I think you can afford to test it out, because the worst is to point it at your whatever you're painting, and then
oh
you get a
yeah.
big splotch of bubble or dots or whatever because it's too thick or too thin or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So for this guy, then I've covered it with the kind of purplish color, and then I will usually um, go straight in with the other color. So I'll clean the airbrush very quickly, just a bit of water through
Mm-hmm.
to clear out the paint, and then I'll put the next color in while it's still wet. I'll do a couple of light coats of the lighter color, and then I'll leave it to dry. I'll see how it looks,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll go back and I might do I might do orange with a drop of yellow in it to get
Mm-hmm.
some of and then just go for the real higher points. And with this, you don't need to be too accurate in terms
Mm-hmm.
of getting this kind of gradient down, but just if you're pretty much in the ballpark of where you want it slightly lighter, and
Mm-hmm.
you can always go back in with the light coat of the brush at the end,
Gotcha.
with your orange. If you don't start with a mix. The mixes
Mm-hmm.
are always towards the end, because if you just do your straight purple, straight orange, and then you start mixing, maybe you're going to mix a bit of blue into the purple, or a bit of orange even into the purple, and a bit of yellow into the orange.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that'll be the kind of last thing you do.
Gotcha.
And if you do too much of it, you can go back in with the pure orange or a pure purple to kind of tidy up the bits that don't look right. It's just that by eye, then you'll see, like if there was a big yellowish bit right in the middle of
Mm-hmm.
his face here, I go, oh yeah, and need to maybe clean that up a little bit with the orange.
Well,
And
and I like, like you said, like you don't have to really worry too much about messing up. Like I think
mm,
some of that gives it some personality, right? Like
oh yeah,
because this is actually supposed to be some sort of creature's skin, so it's
yeah,
it's it's not going to be like a smooth one solid color. So having some, speckling or transitioning or whatever, it actually makes it look more realistic.
yeah, definitely. And um, the other not cheaty thing, but the other thing you can do if you really do something that doesn't look great is light dry brush your white again
Mm-hmm.
to kind of get you back a couple of steps,
Mm-hmm.
and that'll just smooth out. If you say you put too much orange on one side of his face, just
Mm-hmm.
lightly dry brush the white, and then just go lightly over with the color again until, and even then you can just do it with the brush. No, with
Mm-hmm.
fluorescence, the dry brush doesn't work great, so better to just do thin, and you might have to wait to dry a bit between the coats. Or if you have the airbrush going, you can just still very lightly go back in with it.
Now, I
And
know you said you do sometimes we'll do some dry brushing afterwards. What about like
mm,
washes or anything like that? Are you doing any of that on something like this, or is this, pretty much just
no,
airbrush and then dry
yeah,
brushing and then
the
obviously
what
you got to do the eyes and teeth and stuff after, right?
exactly, yeah. No, the wash, I wouldn't do a wash now unless I was thinking of something that was kind of maybe weathered or battle damaged or
Hmm.
something like this. In this, the only time I'd maybe do a wash is if it got to the point where I'm like, oh, this isn't really coming together. Maybe a wash might help it, but generally try and avoid it because it'll really dull down your transitions. If that's if that's what if you want this kind of look, the
Hmm.
wash will blend everything more together, but it'll then look more like just one color.
Well, the
which
reason I asked that is because like the lower part of the face there,
mm,
like you can really see like the crevices coming out, like the
yeah,
darkness, which I mean, obviously you can do if you're going through that where the airbrush and you're just doing it kind of lighter and it's
yeah,
hitting more of the raised
exactly, yeah,
surfaces, which you did a great job of. So that's what I was wondering if you got that look just through airbrush or if you did a like a dark
yeah.
wash
That's
afterwards, but
where
it looks great.
that is where the first step really comes into its own, is where you leave those darker bits, so
Hmm.
that even if you are a bit heavy handed with the airbrush, if you leave the darker parts in the right place, it'll
Hmm.
generally it'll generally serve you well at the end, because you'll get that shadow coming through. So it is a little bit the reverse of the wash kind of thing. It's where you actually do your shadows at the start and then you rely on them being there at the end.
Yeah, I mean, the face on this kind of has almost like a scaly texture on the
Mm,
bottom part, and you
yeah,
can see all those individual like scales. Like it just really popped well.
yeah,
So beautiful.
absolutely, yeah. And this is a Wolf King, isn't it? The
I believe that's one that he has there.
yeah.
Yep. And then here, now this is something I was actually just talking about in a video the other day that I really haven't done, which is just painting up
Mm,
heads from Mythic Legions. And I kind of want to challenge myself to do a couple of these this year and see what I can do with some Mythic Legion heads. But these came out great too. So, obviously similar kind of process with this, but can
yeah.
you kind of talk about what your idea was for painting these and what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I love Novian Lean. I love the sculpt. So,
Hmm.
and I have a bunch of him. So this was obvious. I was going to have a bunch of Novian Lean heads that I wasn't really going to use on my figures, on my own
Hmm.
display. So, um, this was an idea I came up with, and I loved the combination of the greens and the purple,
Hmm.
with the yellow. So this was just experiment. And the guy the green, yellow, purple guy on the left of the screen here, as we look, he that was literally just blending. So until it came out how it looked. So there was like one drop of purple going in, doing the kind of line around.
Yeah.
And then, okay, let's tidy that up with a little bit of pink over it to kind of give it a glow. Okay, that looks good. Okay, let's try and do a bit of yellow, a little bit of green in the middle. And just kind of knowing when to stop then
Yeah.
was the key. But yeah, again, exactly the same process as before, with given the basically zenithal plus dry brush.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and the guy on the right here, um, he was one, he actually was, I remember with him, I had to kind of go back and do it a bit more because it ended up being a little bit asymmetrical in terms of the
Mm.
colors that just didn't make sense. So then I had to kind of go back and do a bit more orange and then tidy up with the pink. But it wasn't too much work. But I remember the other guy came together much quicker. Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
mean they both look amazing. I
mm,
love the difference, the transition from the one color to the other, and then also the color that you chose for the eyes
mm.
on both really pops with the color scheme.
Yeah, and that,
Uh,
like, I was, while I was doing other stuff, I was a good hour thinking about what color to put in there. It wasn't
mhm.
a kind of a just oh, there's orange, I'll do it. There's green.
Yeah,
I was actually thinking, because yeah, after doing the kind of, you've set out your colors nicely, and then you're like, okay, if I put the wrong eye color in here, this could make a mess of it. And okay,
yeah,
you
it
could
could
do it
either
again,
blend in
but
too much
but
or clash
yeah,
too much, but I feel
yeah,
like on both of these it
yeah,
came out
it just
perfect.
worked out.
So
And even the guy with the teeth there, I was wondering, should I pick out the teeth? And then I thought, no, you know what? It looks fine.
awesome.
Yeah.
So here's a couple cool ones.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know, like I would get something like this, and my immediate thought would be to try to like do something how we would see a bat,
Yeah.
right? Like I would do
Hmm.
research on. I wouldn't even think to paint them something like this. So you get this, and what's going through your brain as you
Well,
get
I've
ready to
just
paint these up?
done, yeah, I remember at the time I'd just done a bunch of realistic looking stuff, and I was like, okay, I
Hmm.
have these and I like them, and I've seen other people do them in the realistic way, and
Hmm.
there isn't too many other ways you can do them in the realistic way. So,
Hmm.
what would I be really scared to see if I was in a sci-fi movie?
Gotcha.
It's crazy luminous colored bats.
Yeah, I mean the one on the left is very cool looking, but the one on the
Yeah,
right, like it looks like there's about 15 different colors in it. Like it
yeah.
is just crazy.
And
Yeah.
you get that sometimes with this where you just put a color over the top and you go into the next color and you're like, oh,
Mhm.
that made a really nice in between color again, you
Yeah.
know. And that's the thing, just to be careful if you're doing this, just to pick your colors so that maybe even blend them together
Mhm.
on your palette or on a piece of card, just to see how they look going into
Yeah,
each
it's
other.
like I see green and yellow
Hmm.
and red and orange
Yeah,
and purple, but and with all of that, it doesn't clash. It's not like it,
yeah.
you would think with all those colors it would look too busy, but it doesn't
Hmm.
because it all just kind of flows very nicely.
Yeah, and that's the thing of like, yeah, you can look at it at some stage and go, that is too busy. Okay, I'll do a little bit more of the orange or a little bit
Mhm.
more of the yellow to kind of soften that, too much of whatever was clashing, and that's the thing you have to do there. So,
What about the inside of the ears there? Because it
mhm,
looks like you've got some really nice highlighting and shading in there. Are you going in and
yeah.
detail that the highlights
So
on there? Or?
for the ears, I did the dry brush, and then I looked at them, and if they weren't quite symmetrical, I would have went in very lightly with some white just to
Okay.
tidy up a little bit, but not over the top. You don't want a big, the
Hmm.
way dry brush always gives you that nice little smooth kind
Yeah.
of highlight and shadow, and that's very hard to do. Uh,
Especially inside of a crevice
in
like this,
Yeah,
like
so
because
it was
yeah.
really just like little, and then okay, that still doesn't look right. Oh, a little bit more, you know, and letting it dry, because of course when you put the paint on wet, it can
Hmm.
look brighter. Then you
Hmm.
give it 5 minutes to dry, and then you go, oh yeah, and then you can always dry brush it again just to blend them together but very
Yeah.
lightly. You're talking very
The,
lightly here at that point.
the inside of those ears just look
Mm,
fantastic. I mean, there's so
yeah,
much depth there. It's awesome.
cheers.
Um, so here's another few that
Hmm. I
especially
love
like the
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 lion is one of
lion. Like
my favorites.
I
Yeah,
would not expect to see a lion like this. Like
yeah,
I've seen a lot of people paint up a lot of different lion heads, mostly from Planetary Dog, but some from other
yeah,
places as well. And I wouldn't think to see a lion like this. So tell us a little
yeah.
bit about that.
Again, painted a lot of lines like yourself in
Hmm.
the kind of expected color schemes, and he was just I had him and I think the gorilla and the previous two on the same kind of
Ah, gotcha.
batch. So I
Hmm.
was like, right, I'm going through and seeing how this looks, and I wasn't sure with the lion if it was going to work out, but I'm quite happy with
Oh,
it.
I love it.
The
Yeah.
face was the thing to do, because I think I had to really define the face
Hmm.
as the face and not have it just blend into the hair. So to do the hair and the
Yeah.
face as a kind of a contrasting thing,
Hmm.
um, but
I
not
think
too
the
contrasting.
like kind of more orangish color around the nose
Mm,
and upper mouth makes it look very fierce. Like
yeah,
the sculpt itself already looks angry,
yeah,
but that warmer color on the front going into
yeah.
that yellowish color, it just looks very angry and hot and just yeah.
Yeah, it does look like he's boiling up, and if this was
Yeah.
an animation or CGI, it might go back into his the rest of his face as he's
Yeah.
getting angrier. Yeah. The guy in the middle, then, that was an interesting
Hmm.
one. That was no airbrush, so that was
Oh, okay.
two or three different contrast paints, um, pretty much at the same time. So I did the red at the top,
Hmm.
the darker bluish purple at the bottom, and then a middle color in the middle, and I just put them on pretty much one after the other,
Hmm.
and then blended them into each other until it looked
And then the
good.
speckling on it.
Toothbrush with a bit of paint.
There you go. That's what I thought it was, but I
Yeah,
figured I'd wait for it. Yeah,
yeah. It
gotcha.
wasn't the airbrush having a bad day.
Yeah, I thought it was. I love that
Yeah.
toothbrush technique. So
Mm.
I'll probably have to record one of those for somebody someday, or
Yeah.
for the channel,
It's great.
because
You
it's
just
so fun. Yeah.
yeah, it's just it's what you'd like to do as a kid, just mess around and see how it works
Yep.
out. And um, uh, with all these things, subtlety's better. You can always you do it subtly at first with the
Mm,
toothbrush, and then okay, if you need a bit more, you build up. Don't go in all guns blazing because it's very hard to reverse out of that.
yeah. And then the gorilla one,
Mm,
I really love the whole mouth area, and
yeah.
then the glowing eye. Like, yeah.
Yeah, so try to give him a more realistic looking mouth. So there's
Mm-hmm.
like it is still a gorilla in there. It's
Mm-hmm.
just he's kind of mutated in terms of the skin and the fur and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
then the eye, I was like, yeah, that I think that's going to work with the glowing eye. So um, I think possibly because the eye looked a little bit um, dead, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
how can I liven this up without maybe going too realistic? So
Yeah.
give him a glow. Yeah.
And yeah, so this one on the left here, like,
Yeah.
this feels very Star Wars to me. Like, I've
Yeah.
like the sculpt itself, but then also the way that you did it, the way that lens sparkles and pops on
Hmm.
here, like, whew, so good. So yeah,
Yeah.
tell us
So
a little bit about these guys.
the lens is so very gloss black paint,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think two different of these color shift paints that I
Okay.
mixed, um, and a couple of layers of it with the brush just until I was happy with it. Um, and again, the I think the base on him, it's again like the first or the other Novian lean, the one
Mm-hmm.
of the similar color, similar technique to that, and maybe a bit of dry brushing to tidy him up. I think I went in with an actual normalish yellow, so non-fluorescent yellow, to
Mm-hmm.
tidy up a little bit of that yellow. Um, and then I tried to do the goggles. I thought, as chrome, as silver as I could get without,
Yeah.
um,
It
getting
really
the
worked. I mean, that
yeah,
it looks really nice. And not only that, but the circle rim that you get of the black around the blue on the
yeah,
lens is like 100% crisp. Like,
yeah.
it is perfect.
And the best way to get that is not to do the circle, but to build the circle of metallic kind of out from the black that's underneath,
Hmm.
and then just leave that little rim. That
Yeah,
always seems to look better. It's the same
absolutely.
with if you're doing, I don't know, eyes on a figure.
Hmm.
Trying to draw a little eye under the eyelash could
Hmm.
be difficult, but if you have just a darker color in there and then you build your light color until it's almost covering it,
Hmm.
that just works better. And I guess that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, I always tell people when they're doing eyes, like, make sure you claim that whole space, right? Because these
Mm.
are tiny heads anyway. So claim that space with the white, and then you can go in and trim around it and get that real crisp line that you're looking for. And then from there, then you can cover that up with some skin tone. It's like, it's
Yeah,
kind of working outward. So yeah.
yeah, exactly. Just define your area, and
Hmm.
then you can still paint. Best thing about paint is you could put more paint on top of
Exactly.
it.
And then the guy on the right, once
Yeah,
again, like, really cool job on the eyes. Like,
yeah.
I mean, they just have this
It's
like piercing metallic purple.
yeah, yeah. That was I think that was just a good choice there to use the metallic purple. It just worked
Hmm.
for him. Yeah, and those oranges and pinks, they just seem to work well together.
Absolutely.
I would never
Oh,
have used
sorry.
much pink before.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
doing
you got
these
a lot.
now I'm like, this pink bottle is nearly half empty.
Well, we got a few more here because
Yeah,
now I love this head. You
yeah,
you guys worked on this head last year. You had this
that's
one, you had
right.
the leprechaun one.
Hmm.
And this head is so good. And I love the different kind of paint jobs that you're getting with these.
Yeah,
But yeah, tell us kind of like, as you're going through here, like, what your thoughts were doing all these different ones.
yeah. So this was, as you say, head we did last year with the Prop Masters. So Mal was in charge of this little project. So he brought this one to fruition with their sculptor over there, Edu. Um, yeah. So I was like doing these fluorescent paint jobs, and I had
Mm-hmm.
got a couple of prints from Prop Masters. Anthony did the rest of them for
Mm-hmm.
us at Legion's Con, and I said I got to do a couple of these fluorescent ones. You know, people will be expecting it if they see all my other fluorescent ones. That I have a few of these, so it was again the same idea. Actually, left one here is a non-air brush. It's so the green and blue. That's a
Oh,
contrast
really?
method again as well. Yeah,
Wow.
um,
That's my favorite one out of,
yeah,
I mean, I like the other ones
mine
too,
too.
but that one is just so cool.
Mine too. Yeah, I like that. It worked really well because the reason I did it is because I wanted to do the blue,
Mm-hmm.
and um, that blue I just didn't have it in a fluorescent that looked like that. So I was
Mm.
like, you know what? I'll try that method with the contrast paints. And I think if you do a good enough under shade, like we talked
Mm-hmm.
about before, it'll work. The other guys were the airbrush method, just a bit of kind of, you know, experimenting with that method until it got right. And I
Right.
wanted to do them kind of the reverse of each other almost, you know. So the guys with the yellowish mouth and the other guys with the pink mouth, kind of reversed. Um, and then yeah, the leather straps and stuff. Decided to do so they're all different colors. I think the guy in the middle has a kind of a bluish gray,
Mm-hmm.
and the other two guys have different shades of brown. So I wanted to keep it a little bit like they could be, because I think this sculpt is a kind of a guy that has some tech and he has some, you know, some sort of a suit. He's not just a pure alien.
Right.
And um, yeah, that was the kind of moment where you're going, right now I have built an under, you know, basically a base tone
Mm-hmm.
that I can't easily replicate here if I slop the brown or the blue, because you know we all post the best pictures of our paint jobs, and nobody sees the big streak we leave across the head because we haven't been paying attention, or you know, because we're pretty tired
Yeah.
on a particular day. So yeah, that was a bit nerve wracking, but I pretty much did the, you know, the base shading and all that, this
Mm.
like up onto the straps, and then I left it for a day and was like, okay, I need to come back to this when I'm at the start of
Yeah.
a paint
Come
session.
back when you haven't had a couple cups of coffee and your
Yeah,
hands shaking.
yeah, exactly. This
Yeah.
was a Saturday morning paint job as opposed to like a Wednesday evening after
Right.
a hard day.
And then here's just some other awesome ones. First off, I just got to start with the one in the middle, that merman.
Mm,
Oh, so freaking good.
yeah, he's fun.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that one. And then the two on the outer sides, like this one on the right, I know it's a lot of the same kind of blending and even some of the kind of, you
Hmm.
know, pinks and yellow colors that we've been seeing a lot, but man, it's so good. It really works for that sculpt. Um,
Yeah, that's a great sculpt from Immortal Collections. So the the middle wasn't working for me on this guy. It was too muted. So I
mhm,
went in with like the glossy version of the Pro Acryl White,
mhm,
for with the dry brush again after doing and then I did multiple coats of the yellow, and then I
mhm,
also on the horns I did like multiple coats of the yellow uh, on the horns to give it a kind of more vibrant look. And that was a case of I was doing other paint jobs, and I would
mhm.
literally in between waiting for something else to dry, I would have my yellow fluorescent on my wet palette, and I would do the horns and then leave it for 10 minutes to dry, or 15 minutes, because with the fluorescents, if you're doing them by brush, you have to wait in between every single. If you go over it wet, you'll peel a bit off, or you know you'll end up with a mess, and you'll be crying.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
Well, that's a good
that
tip.
was yeah. And again with the horns on this fella here on the left,
Mhm.
which is another one of their sculpts. It was again a little bit of the going back in with the white to get it to.
And
Um,
then the on the merman, like you've got a bunch of extra stuff here. It looks like some
mm,
coral and different things.
yeah,
Is
so
that just like
that was green stuff.
okay?
Kind of trying to make shapes that look like sea, and then a couple of the patches. Yeah, that was just sculpting it on, and then just picking out with a little tool to make little holes, and then just painting it up in different kind of sea-ish colors, and then I went
Mhm,
over the top of it with a kind of a metallic, that metallic medium stuff
mhm,
that you can mix into other paints to make metallic. And one or two of them I might have gone over with the color shift metallics.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Well, and then the last one I've got to pull up. Some people are saying this may be the custom of 2025 so far. Um, so yeah,
oh
this
yeah,
thing
this
is
was fun.
this is spectacular.
Thank
I
you.
mean, it's more than just a head. Obviously, you got a full body repaint on here. That double neck is great. I love those two heads. The
Yeah.
way that it's painted, like this just feels perfect to me.
Yeah. So um the biggest challenge with this was, of course, I had to have everything on the go at the same time for all the body parts, all the pinkish, yellowish parts.
Mm-hmm.
Not the heads. The heads I could do separately
Mm-hmm.
and just blend in, but definitely with the neck pieces to go together, all the pieces of the arms, the legs, the feet to a certain extent, but they're separated by the armor, so you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to be as worried about how they blend in with the other piece of the leg. Um, so they were all out, and it was one big. It was a couple of big sessions. Each time there was a kind of a layer of the different shades. It
Mm-hmm.
was one big hour with the airbrush, going over and back, going over and back, and then the next one was doing a little bit of correcting to make sure it looked fine. And a little bit of a Trevor Williams thing here. It probably even looks better in person in the
That's
photo.
awesome. That's awesome.
Like the
Hope,
neck, the
hope to
neck
see it at
here, the
Legion's
neck
Con
here
then.
looks a little bit like not washed out, but it looks a little bit less contrast. But there is more contrast in the actual figure in hand.
Gotcha.
And the extra thing I did here. So this is the skirt piece from a Mythic Legions figure. That samurai. They
Mm-hmm.
have one. I think Lord Bashadi is one of the figures that comes with that.
Yeah.
And then I took a cosmic belt from the Sentry,
Mm-hmm.
and I cut I cut it kind of in the middle, and I actually had to cut it in. So I just was left with this strip
Yeah.
of belt like this, and I put it I glued it around the skirt piece, and then there was a gap of about like this on the side of it. So
Mm-hmm.
actually, hold on, I have that guy here.
Yeah, and then it
Just
looks like Novian lean collar piece and pauldrons.
yeah. So if you just put me up big there, you'll see.
Yeah. Hold on one second.
I have the little
Oh man,
blue
yeah. Look at all
tubes
the
there. Yeah.
look at the back though.
Yeah.
Look at all the transition of colors on the back. Like, see,
Yeah.
you're right. Like, you can't see that in the picture. That is beautiful.
And then if you want to take the armor off, I also have this little guy.
Oh, very nice. Very
Don't let
nice.
him go to waste.
Now, is this thing already sold, or is this something that is going
No,
to be
this is
available at Legion's
something
Con?
that's going to be available at Legion's Con.
Nice.
I'll keep it till then. I think
All
it's
right, folks,
nice if
you
people
heard
see
it
that
here.
in
Like
person.
you want to hurry up and get to that table because man, that thing's just fabulous.
Yeah, I was
This,
originally going to do the snake heads, Curtis, and
yeah.
then I had these heads in the same order from Mark Calvo as the neck piece.
I think
And I
these
was
heads
like,
are absolutely
yeah,
perfect. Like this feels like something you would see in a Star Wars cantina. Like if you just walked in, like you could just see this thing just kind of walking around in the background.
yeah.
I love that the one head is like all smiling and happy. The other one is more serious. Just very cool.
Yeah, and then I tried to keep it relatively simple with the armor. There's a little bit of difference in some of the metallics on some of the rivets, but it's very subtle because I thought there was so much going on with the body and the
Yeah, I'm glad we
arms
got to
and
see
stuff.
that up close because as
Yeah.
amazing as this picture is, man, when you see some of those details up close, you're like, holy
Yeah.
cow! Like there's so many
Yeah.
colors in there. Very
Yeah.
cool.
So it's fun. Yeah, I wanted to do that snake body. Obviously after Legion's Con we had the thigh guard, but we got the lower legs as well, and we got the
Right.
feet. And there were so many people that did so many awesome customs. I had to I did a bunch of other customs, and then I was like, okay, I have to tackle this. How am I going to do it? And I was like, what do I do slightly
Well,
differently to others? And
it's
that
definitely
was
an amazing one. I know it's gotten the attention of a lot of people so far. So,
good.
yeah,
Well, it'll
great work.
attract them to our table, and
Yeah,
that'll be
there you
fun.
go.
So we get to talk to them. Yeah.
They will. Are you guys still going to be in that first row, right? When
Um,
people walk in, or do you?
yeah, I'm
Oh,
not
I guess we
sure.
don't know tables yet, right? He
No,
hasn't.
we don't know exact location. I think we'll be in the same general area. I think we're
Yeah.
going to be bunch of
Yeah, they don't even have
people
the
again.
rooms up yet. I was surprised about that. Like
Yeah, that's true.
last
Yeah.
year we had already had the rooms booked for like a month or two. So
Yeah, I was trying to think. I probably should book my flight anyway. I'm kind of waiting for the rooms, but
yeah, yeah,
I'm like, maybe I should just book that flight and assume we'll get the rooms, no problem.
yeah.
But yeah, I'll be in that general area, that front corner. I don't know if we'll switch tables with somebody else, because I think maybe we're on the outside there. That maybe one of the other guys that wants to do a bigger display
Mm-hmm.
with a bit more height, that might be a better
Gotcha.
spot for them. And as we were coming from abroad, we're not going to bring massive loads of
Right.
shelves and height. You know, we just have a
But the stuff you
couple
do
of
bring is
risers.
going to be absolute fire. So
We try.
so there you go, folks. You heard it here. Airbrush is not the devil.
No, it's a tool, as I
There
said.
you
But
go.
I use I use all the tools in this paint job, and
Mm-hmm.
the brush is definitely the tool to go in and repair what the airbrush has done.
There you go. Well, there's just some amazing gradients and transitions, beautiful colors. Love seeing all that, and thank you for just kind of spending some time, talking
No
to us
problem.
about it.
Thanks for asking me on. It's if you told me a couple of years ago somebody'd be asking me on their YouTube channel to talk about my art, I would have been very surprised. So,
You know
it's
what? That's a good point, though. I should probably have Richard on to talk about his drawings. That would be a good
yeah,
one, right?
that can be a good one. Yeah, he
Yeah.
probably has a. We definitely need to do another live stream in the next month or two. So,
Oh,
he's
that'd be
due.
good.
He's due his next batch.
Very nice. Anything else that you want to leave the folks with before we?
No, just assuming this will be out before the end of the Dragon
Oh yeah.
crowdfunding. Go and have a look at that. Support it if you can. It's going to be awesome. There's a lot of gradients on that Dragon. I can tell you what, if you want to see where the money is going in that, a lot of it is going into that amazing paint job.
It's interesting. I was just talking to Sherry recently about the Dragon, and she was talking about how, like, normally when she gets a figure, they bring in a tray of parts, right? And it's just all broken up, and she has to paint the parts individually. She said for the Dragon, it was like one tray and then another tray, and it was another. Like, they just kept bringing her trays, and and like some of the trays, it was like trying to figure out what are these parts that I'm looking at, because it's not like it's something that she's painted before. So like you would have the tail all broken up into a bunch of pieces, and it's like which part goes where and what,
Yeah.
And then she said after she kind of did like most of the paint work on it, then they assembled it, and then she had to do some airbrushing after it was assembled, and she actually did some airbrushing over the whole thing, like once it was together, which was interesting. It's just like kind of a different way of doing it.
And pretty nerve-wracking, because if you press it, if you
a
little bit
you don't want
heavy-handed
to
there with the
speckle it at that
airbrush, you
point.
got probably a month's worth of painting gone into that Dragon.
But I'm even more, once I talked to her, I was even more excited to paint one, because she said that just the amount of details that the dry brush can pick up on it is just, it's unbelievable. So
yeah. Well, you've heard Jeremy say that basically they have people in the factory that are being paid just to assemble it, because so many spiky parts on it that it's actually
plus it's,
almost
it's
hazardous
that much
to do
weight.
it.
Like you're holding that much weight and trying to shove spiky parts together. Yeah. So hope everybody's working safely.
You're gonna need a dry brush that's like the size of a brush for painting your walls there behind you.
Exactly. Well, John, I appreciate you being on with me. I'm gonna put you
Thank you,
backstage.
Curtis.
If you've got to
awesome.
run, totally understand. If not, hang out and I'll be right with you. All right. Thanks, sir.
Cheers.
All right, folks, that is another How'd They Do That. There you go. Airbrush is just a tool. It's not the devil. And you can do some really great things with it. It's awesome for if you're doing a lot of priming. It's awesome for priming. It's really good for color shift paints. Like if you get the metallic color shifts, it's really good for that. That's a lot harder with a regular brush, because they kind of end up almost like foamy sometimes if you're putting on a regular brush. And then if you're doing multiple colors like what we looked at today with John's, you can see you get some really great transitions from one color to another, and you can do some neat stuff. So appreciate him jumping on and talking through that. Once again, if you haven't checked them out, Your Allegiance podcast, they have a audio format. They've got it on YouTube. I like the YouTube version because they're really good looking guys. And check out their Patreon. They, like I said, best Patreon going. So hope you picked up some things from this. And whether it's working with an airbrush or doing some dry brushing or anything, if you picked up something from this and you utilize it in one of your customs, make sure you tag John, tag myself, because we'd love to see what you come up with. And until next time, folks, keep creating.